Listen now, we the talk around town. Alex threw the ball to Smokey for a touchdown. It's fourth down and you don't really want no more. We've been winning from the door. You should check the scoreboard. Check the scoreboard.
Welcome back to another episode of the Scoreboard. Week 10, last week of the regular season USFL. Unfortunately, we have to say no more playoff implications. The playoff picture is set. We are done. We still have 4 games to be played, and they still matter. Maybe not for the league, but they matter for us because we're still in the prediction game. Smokey, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. Better than, actually, I'm going to say better than Stallions fans right now. Because it looks like something is wrong in Birmingham right now.
It took you 9 weeks to be able to say that for the first time.
Yes, exactly.
I hope you're happy about it.
I am so happy about it.
You're not going to get to say that a whole lot in the future.
I don't know, man. I might get to say it a few more times.
You know, if you're better than
twice.
Stallions fans, you're pretty good. Because I'm good. I'm still pretty darn good. I'm at 8-1. I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah. I mean, they're in a good spot. They just don't look good right now. These past 2 weeks, they have looked bad. Even though they pulled out the win 2 weeks ago, but this week they just couldn't do it against the one-win team.
Well, we'll find out that I disagree with that, but we'll get into the Week 10 games, and I guess we'll kind of shade forward to the playoffs a little bit as well, because we know exactly what's going to happen. We do have Week 10. Now, first of all, what's the prediction standings?
Let's see. Last week, we agreed on everything, and we added 2 points to our scores. Brings the total 25 for me and 23 for you.
I got to make up points. I got 4 more games this week, and then 3 playoff games. 7 total games to make up 2 points.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Probably not going to happen, but you can try.
Unlikely, but I got to go overboard. Should have picked the Gamblers. Should have just picked the Houston Gamblers. This is a story. This is the B plot of the entire season. Is my gripes with the Gamblers.
They're only going to win if you don't pick them.
I guess that's it. It shows how powerful it is to even beat Birmingham.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. That's hilarious.
I have to figure something out here. Yeah, I got one more Gamblers game coming up, and I am dedicated to getting this one right. I have to get it right. Mm-hmm. Week 10, starting off with the preview to a playoff matchup in the North here. Your Philadelphia Stars at the New Jersey Generals.
Yeah, final week of the season, and these two guys are going to have to play each other twice in a row. So this, like you said, is a preview of the playoffs here. I'll start with the Stars. They got the win over the Maulers. You can't really say you could be too happy about that because it was the Maulers, and the Maulers defense showed up, especially that pass defense. Case Cookus was getting eat up. Now, 2 weeks ago, he came off probably the best game of his entire life and dominated. And in this one, he just got ate up. Luckily, Colburn was the star. He actually ended up icing the game in the end. They brought in KJ Costello. There's a blast from the past. Mississippi State. Man, Mississippi State. You think about that. We've talked a lot about their quarterbacks from Dak Prescott, which everybody talks about because he's in the NFL. But the XFL, we were talking about Nick Fitzgerald. Who else was in there? Jordan Ta'amu, obviously. So the spring leagues have a lot of Mississippi State quarterbacks, but Sewell Howard, they are stars when they can get the ball, but Case Cookus was getting eat up. KJ Costello didn't do much better. On the other side, Luis Perez probably had the worst game of his career, which is not bad. He was still right there at 100. I think he hit 99 this time, which he hasn't been below 100 all season. So technically, statistically, this is his worst game of the season. But the Generals are still 8-1. They pulled out the win against the Panthers. And that DeAndre Johnson got a little work here. So they are obviously still willing to go with the 2-quarterback system. I still think Luis Perez is the better quarterback. But if he is struggling at any time, DeAndre Johnson is there and completely capable of running the ball. Darius Victor, Trey Williams. Not a lot of work when DeAndre's in there because he's just going to run the ball himself. Darius Shepard, Turpin, and the rest. They are all good when Perez is in there throwing the ball because he is extremely accurate. So it makes it hard. I want to say whoever I pick here, I'm going to pick against next week. Even though I think the Generals are going to win it all this year. I think they are the best team. But I want the Stars to win and go on to the championship. So I am picking the Generals to win this one.
So you can set up the rubber match in the playoffs and then pick your Stars.
Exactly.
All right. That's a very convoluted way of doing it, but I definitely get it, and it might work. Maybe you can like reverse jinx it in a way to get your Stars to a championship game.
Yeah.
I'll agree with you on one thing, which is picking the Generals this week. I probably am going to pick them next week as well, barring collapse, and turns out that the Stars are a bad matchup for them because you've been beating on Luis Perez the whole season, and he's been probably the most consistent out of all these Stars that we've seen. Now, he didn't have a great game, mostly because he was sat for part of it, and also they just didn't pass the ball all that much because the run was working. Their offense was not as explosive as you would think or would be used to with the Generals, especially considering you're only playing the lowly Panthers. But you can always rely on bad teams. Nothing against Josh Love, but he's been around the league for a bit. Turns the ball over in critical situations, and the Generals end up winning. A close one, but they ended up winning, and they do have the best record now, tied with the Stallions in the league. So that is one thing I will give you. I'll pick the Generals this week because the Stars did not look convincing. Yeah, you said Case Cookers probably had the best game out of every quarterback in the league. That was last week or 2 weeks ago, that 400-yard performance with a rushing 3 pass touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. That was the performance of the year for sure. But he doesn't have that same consistency as Luis Perez does. And especially this being basically a 2-game series, I'm banking on consistency even more so. So Generals to win it this week and then probably next week as well. But I will reserve the right to change my mind on that, depending on what we're seeing. Stallions at the Bandits.
Man, the one-loss Stallions. People were probably losing money on that one because they were betting them to go all the way undefeated, and the one-win Gamblers came up and got a win over them, and it's all your fault, obviously. You jinxed your own team and helped out the Gamblers because you were mad at the Gamblers, so of course you jinxed your own team. That just makes sense, right? Jamar Smith, another not good game. I just, looking at this team, they don't have what they had in the first of the season. I don't know if it's they're wearing out, maybe. A lot of these guys are not used to playing full seasons, you know. Bo Scarborough came in on fire about 5 weeks ago, and now he seems to have lost a step. And maybe that's because he basically came off of his couch to come play in this league in the middle of the season. No off-season training or anything like that. CJ Marable was back. I like CJ Marable. You know, I don't think he's as good as Bo Scarborough, but I do like CJ Marable, and he was better in this game, and they actually used him, so I kind of like seeing that. Bolden and Marlon Williams, it was what it was because Jamar Smith just wasn't on fire. On the other side, even worse, the Bandits ended up getting... I mean, that was just a disaster. Turnover after turnover. Jordan Ta'amu threw 2 interceptions again. I said it at the beginning of the season that Ta'amu was only going to win with this team if he doesn't throw interceptions. And every game that he has thrown interceptions, they have lost. I mean, you make of that what you will, obviously. B.J. Emmons was horrible. This week, B.J. Emmons was the worst running back in this league. I think he ended up with negative yards. And that's their number one running back. They tried to throw a couple guys in there, but Jesus Christ, it was bad. Who else did they throw in there? Washington and Franklin. But, 13 attempts, negative 1 yards. That's the stat I was looking for. An average of minus 0.1. Minus 0.1. That's your average run. I was just surprised by that because B.J. Emmons has flashed sometime this season, and Rashard Davis was not bad. He's probably the one bright spot on that team for this week. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Stallions because maybe the Stallions are going to get back to where they should be. We know they're a good team, and the Bandits are looking bad right now. I'm just not confident in it, but I'll pick the Stallions.
So you mentioned the turnover struggles there for Tampa Bay, and BGM is a victim of that as well. He put the ball on the ground. As for Jordan Ta'amu, and I want to go back to the rushing stat again, because yes, you look at this and you can tell he didn't have a great game by all means. They lost in a disappointing fashion. They missed the playoffs. I want to go back to the rushing stats, because this is something I've been talking about with in regards of Jordan Ta'amu being really the heart and soul of this team. 87 total rushing yards for the Tampa Bay Bandits. Jordan Ta'amu had 86. And he also threw for 300, by the way. Now, he turned the ball over 3 times. He threw 2 picks and he also lost a fumble, which is inexcusable, obviously. But this team still lives and dies by Jordan Ta'amu. Now, over the course of the season, they've died by Jordan Ta'amu because he did not live up to the expectations that we came into the season for having for him. But it couldn't have been a more difficult situation for him, because this Bandits team, they're the Packers of the USFL. They have an incredibly good quarterback and a stinky roster. The Bandits are bad. This might be the worst team in the league, just like the Packers are a bottom 5 team in the NFL. If you take Aaron Rodgers away. Now, I'm not saying he's Aaron Rodgers. It's not exactly the same dynamic, but he is truly this team, and he's everything to the success this team's had. All those 4 wins, that's Jordan Ta'amu. Those 6 losses, that's Jordan Ta'amu not being quite good enough, but not having any help either. And the Breakers, by the way, got to give credit to the Breakers as well. Play well and deserve winning, deserve making the playoffs. Now, here's where we go with the Stallions, okay? Everybody wants to ring the alarm bells. Oh no, the Stallions lost the game. Oh no, they lost. To a bad team. So, number 1. The Stallions lost the game, yes. Did they play badly? I don't think so. I think they played fine. You have Jamar Smith had a perfectly fine game. I think the run game didn't get off the ground as it's supposed to. And credit the Gamblers' defensive line. They're the best. They've been the best unit in the league for the whole season, and it finally really showed on the big stage against a front runner team there. They still have a mobile dual threat quarterback who's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. In fact, 2 of them. They still have a dynamic backfield with both Scoreboard and Marable that can both have the potential to go off any given day, and they can run a tandem offense. They still have the best, most dynamic offensive weapon in the entire league, Victor Bolden Jr., who leads the league in total all-purpose yards. And by the way, he had a pretty good game here. He's still toasting people over the top at least once every single week, and he's going to have a big impact in the playoffs. And the Gamblers are, I've said this a lot too, much better than their record. I think the Gamblers are better than the Bandits. If you even remotely adjust for quarterbacks, the Gamblers are infinitely better than the Bandits. In fact, you put Jordan Ta'amu on the Gamblers, that's an 8-1 team in their own right. And the Bandits are sitting at 2-7 or 1-8. Not to discredit Clayton Thorson entirely. He wasn't playing in this game, but the Gamblers mostly struggled on offense this year, and that's mostly been their situation, closing out in big moments. And this case, they did. Close game again. They did close it out on the Stallions. Got to give them credit where it's due. And they did it in the minimalist fashion that they do, which is play defense. And they scrapped it. This is how a Gambler's win is supposed to look. And this is how you can easily envision they could have been. This record could be flipped. They could be 7-2, playing the exact same way they played. Just getting the breaks to go their way or coming through clutch in the big situations. Now, they didn't. That's the story of the season, and we're not looking back any more than we need to because we got playoffs coming up. For this one, give me the Stallions. Give me the one team that's better at every single position other than quarterback, and the Bandits quarterback is inconsistent as he is. The Stallions are still the best team in the league. They still have all the offensive firepower. They're still the odds-on favorite in every bookie's listing to win the championship. I'm not panicking at all. I'm not worried about it at all. Stallions to put an exclamation point on the Bandits and go into the playoffs on a high. That is my hot take, maybe. I guess it is, because people seem to want to write them off now.
I don't know. I've seen some people put the Generals at number 1 in power rankings now. I've seen people actually drop the Stallions to number 3 and number 4. Which I wouldn't agree with that. I would still have them at number 2. I think the Generals probably are number 1 right now. I've got Generals, Stallions, Stars, and then the Breakers. But
I like to rely on Vegas for power rankings because they know more than anyone else, especially in journalism. If the odds say the Stallions are still favored, they're probably still considered favored among insiders. I'm fine. I'm fine with the Stallions. I'm impressed with the Generals, no doubt, and it's going to be if that turns out to be the championship game, it's going to be a good one. But I'm good. Let's not push the panic button just yet on the Birmingham Stallions. We have the highlight game, the greatest game of the season.
Yeah.
The Panthers at the Pittsburgh Maulers.
This is the game for who doesn't want to be dead last in the first season of USFL. Both of these teams actually showed up last week, even though they lost, because that's what they do. They lose. But they both looked good. They both had very close games. Both of them, I know the Maulers were leading at one point. It might have been both of them, actually. But anyway, the defense showed up for both of these teams. Josh Love. Eric Barriere came in there, too. I don't know what to think about him yet. I really don't know much about him. I know that Josh Love has not been great for the Panthers. I think this team is actually a quarterback away from being good, and we've seen them swap out a few quarterbacks throughout the season. Stevie Scott is good. Maybe Reggie Corbin could get back. If he gets back in there, I think this run game is going to be much better. And I'll let alone Joe Walker, Ishmael Hyman, guys like that, because they don't have a dynamic passer to get the ball to them, unless Eric Barriere is going to pan out at this point, because I don't think Josh Love is a dynamic passer. Over on the other side, Roland Rivers is out and Vat Lee is back in. I thought the Vat Lee experiment was over, but here he is. He played in this game. Groshek and London looked good. You know, the defense is what did it. The defense is what kept them in this game. They brought it to Connor Cookus. I keep saying Connor Cookus because I want to say Connor Cook. Case Cookus. They brought it to him. They were shutting him down. Like this defensive line really looked good, and the linebackers held up as well. It's a tough decision. It really is, because I think the Maulers could get their first win here, but I guess overall they both have horrible quarterback situations. I don't know that Josh Love is any better than Vat Lee. I'm making this pick right on the spot here. I think I'll stick with the Panthers. They probably beat them by a hair.
Panthers over the Maulers. All right. I'm going to go take the Pittsburgh Maulers here. And that is not just for the reason of having to disagree with you and make up points, though that is certainly in the back of my mind. But I do believe that as uninteresting of a game that this is going to be, it's probably going to come down to defense, because let's face it, both of those teams haven't exactly been consistent in terms of offense. It's a revolving door of quarterbacks. We've been talking about it every single week. Heck, the Maulers line up 4 people under center in this game at one point in time to take snaps, and the Panthers probably don't have a quarterback on the roster that started there this season there. So can't rely a lot on offensive rhythm as you can with teams that have been more consistent. And the one thing that the Maulers did do well, and you mentioned this when we were talking about the Stars, they got to the quarterback. They really got to Case Cookus and sacked him 4 times. I'm thinking that could be the difference in this game. Would really be the defensive presence of the Pittsburgh Maulers, putting pressure on presumably Josh Love. I would think is going to start a quarterback for the Panthers. Going to be a low-scoring game, but the Stars put the ball on the ground 4 times. The Panthers surely are able to fumble and turn the ball over. Maulers in probably a low-scoring game. This could be a single-digit scoring game on both sides. This is probably going to be the least interesting in every single way, least watchable game of the season. But Maulers take it, and the Panthers, as they should originally for picking Shea Patterson with the first overall pick, get the worst record in the inaugural season. And all is good.
Yeah.
And to close it out, we have the Breakers, the playoff-bound Breakers, versus the destroyers of my prediction record, single-handedly killing me every week, Houston Gamblers.
Yeah, exactly. And this makes it a tough decision because the Gamblers may be on a hot streak. Who knows? But speaking of Shea Patterson, he's backing up for the Breakers now, but they don't really need him. Like, I don't think anybody in this team really needs him. Maybe the Maulers could have used him over Vat Lee, who knows. But Kyle Sloter is still holding down the fort. They had Zach Smith in there this week. And Zach Smith was statistically much better than Kyle Sloter. And that, along with that awesome defense they had, shutting down the Bandits with all those turnovers. Like, this team looks good. They look as good as they did earlier in the season. 14 tackles for loss. I wrote that down because that is an amazing stat, especially for this league, that defense was able to take the Bandits down 14 times for a loss. That's pretty amazing. There's still no number one receiver on this team. I think Anthony Jones is probably splitting with Jordan Ellis is probably the highlight of this entire team. I want to see like Johnny Dixon and Sean Poindexter out there, but it seems like everybody just gets a split number of passes thrown their way. On the other side, the Gamblers won. Kenji Bahar looked good. I didn't think he was any good last week, but statistically, he was better than Perez by 1 QBR rating this week, which is amazing. But I guess it was just one of those games where everything goes your way. Not much of a run game outside of Bahar scrambling. Tyler Palka was number one over Isaiah Zuber. I did not expect to see that, but there he is. So, I got to take the Breakers, right? Like, you can't really expect the Gamblers to do that again. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but the Breakers are playoff bound, so I will stick with the Breakers.
You see, I could approach this from two ways, right? The Breakers just had their clincher game in week 9. So is this the point where you actually rest starters? Because you're going to face the Stallions in the playoffs already, and you're going to have a monumental task. But you also get a chance to play the Gamblers, and here's the kind of the psychological part that I am totally reading into this myself, and it's not actually a tangible thing. If you go into the matchup with the Stallions, and you can say, that team that you lost to 2 weeks ago, we just beat them last week. Maybe there's something there for the Breakers to think, okay, if we win this game, that's a that might be a psychological advantage. I can't pick the Gamblers games right anyway. There's no possible way for me to get this correctly. I'm just gonna take the Breakers because I don't want to lose the point to you on the Gamblers. This is my new strategy, by the way, and it should have been earlier. And I'm sad I didn't realize this trend earlier in the season. I need to agree with you on Gamblers games because I'm not making points. I'm just losing points on the Gamblers games. Anything else is fine. I can try to work my way through some points. Gamblers games, just write them off. Agree, make it a draw every single time. I'm taking the Breakers. I'm taking the 1 point that you're giving me, hopefully with the Maulers, and I'm taking a 1 point deficit into the playoffs. And damn it, I'm making up for it. Probably taking the Generals next week, and then we're good. And then we're even. And then in the championship game, you'll pick the Generals against the Stallions, and I'll take the Stallions, and the Stallions win, and I win. And everything's good.
I don't really see it happening that way, but who knows?
That's how it's gonna happen. That's the next 3 weeks. If you don't have time to tune into the scoreboard for the next 3 weeks, I already took it off the top. That's exactly what's happening.
It would be nice to see 2 9-1 teams go at it though in the championship.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And the Generals' only loss is to the Stallions in the first game of the season, so that would be poetic right there.
It is a good setup for a revenge game.
Yes, absolutely.
Not as poetic as 10-0 home team season, I will say, but still, it's gonna be a good storyline either way. Really, no matter how it goes down. Even if it's the Stars, that's gonna be a good storyline. The Breakers are gonna be a good storyline.
The Stars versus the Breakers.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, I love the Stars as my team. I like the Stars. But it's going to be weird if it comes down to the Stars and the Breakers, I would think. 2-6 or theoretically 7-3 by then. Or it could be 6-4, actually. Both teams could be 6-4 in the championship, which doesn't seem as appealing. Like, that stat line is just not as sexy as two 10-1 teams, going at it. But
though, if you have either the Stars or if you get either the Stars or the Breakers, you're gonna have the underdog story, right? Because they're inevitably going to be facing the Generals of the Stallions. If you get both of them, you have two big stories in the Southern and Northern Championship games already, both overcoming, facing their underdog story, kind of overcoming the juggernaut in that specific division and making to the championship game. Either way, it's going to be a good story, I believe, no matter what.
Yeah.
To me, of course, hopefully ending with the Stallions on top. To you, I guess, the Stars.
Yeah, hopefully the Stars, but if not, I'll take the Generals.
Take the Generals, if not the Stars?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, so I told you, I think it was week 2 when you were like, have you decided on a team yet? And I was like, it's down between the Stars and the Generals. So it played out pretty well for both of those teams. The Generals is my second favorite team in this league, so.
To me, it was down to the Stallions and the Gamblers, and it's become pretty clear at this point which of those teams is bad juju for me. And
yeah, it's a good thing you didn't pick the Gamblers.
I'm glad I picked the Stallions, because if I picked the Gamblers, I would have homered for them even more. I would have even lost even more points for them, because I would pick them to win every single time. Yeah. So I'm glad that didn't happen. So take the Stallions. Maybe next year.
But one thing we have decided is that the Gamblers are winning this week over the Breakers.
Yes, because I did not pick them.
Yes, absolutely.
That is correct. We have decided that.
So we're definitely not going 4 for 4 this week, either one of us.
No way. I need to make a betting slip starting next season and bet against my pick on the scoreboard every single time. I feel like on the Gamblers. That's going to be some good money there.
Yeah, you could have made a fortune this year.
Next week, playoff matchups. We're going to have a separate show, still talk about them. The games, we already know what it's going to be. One of them we're even going to get to preview. Stars, Generals, Breakers, Stallions, for anyone who hasn't been paying attention, is going to be the USFL playoffs, but week 10 still to be played before that. So that's our picks for week 10. Agreements, disagreements, put them in the comments. Let us know what you think. How do we break the Gambler's curse? How do I break the Gambler's curse? And preview to the playoffs, because we already know what's going on. Let us know your picks. You can fill on your playoff bracket. It's not a very big one because there's only 4 teams. But any opinions, let us know in the comments. Smokey, you have anything to add?
I think that's it for this week, man.
All right, we're going to see you in the next one.
Deuces.
Check the scoreboard. Ha.